obvious way to refer to the success of that first partnership was the winning of the Golden Lion in Venice in '96. So basically, there is this moment where of all of the exhibits in the Biennale, one is chosen to be the best, and it was the work of Odile and her partner. And then with his death, I mean, starts a new office, a one-woman office, and then it all happens again. Another embarrassing series of successes. So many competition wins, projects, large projects, bigger and bigger. Especially like the new wing of the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Macro, which is an amazing name, in Rome, but also for me especially the restaurant in Garnier's. It's just impossible that you did this. It's impossible to make a restaurant in that space. So some kind of miracle to have been able to insert into one of the most famous interiors there is, another interior just as beautiful as the original, with a very interesting dialogue and so on. Super interesting. Many, many awards, exhibitions, publications, and so on. So it's sort of a super strong architect, as you will see. And what I, of course, always like in the work is that it has this amazing combination of professionalism, but also transgression. And I think this whole thing of combining super professionalism with super transgression, only the French can do that. So I'm sorry, you're kind of very French. In the Anglo-Saxon world, these two things can never be combined, to be so professional and so transgressive. Or at least to say in the Anglo-Saxon world, which is all about repression, all the transgressive stuff has to be hidden. Very, very interesting to bring the two dimensions in visibility. Also, Odile is a great teacher. We know that, of course, because she was for so many years a visiting professor here. In the school, we lost Odile at one point because she started to have her own school. She became director of the École Supérieure d'Architecture in Special of Architecture in Paris, which, as we were joking before, finally you had the sense that there was a school in Paris after a long, deathly silence. And again, it's a school that has operated since 2007, very much in Odile's spirit, which means super lively, super complex, many, many things happening. It's a school a little bit bigger than the one here. There's maybe 1,000 students here. There's like 750, but very, very dynamic, and the school that we feel the relationship with in Paris. Odile is very much a friend of this school through being a teacher, but also through basically running the most amazing school in Paris. This also makes for us friendship, whether we remember to talk to each other or not. There is this relationship between schools that one knows that inside Paris is an incubator for new thinking, and that incubator has a relationship to this incubator, which is very personal, because one of our favorite teachers from here, who came from there, is now there, doing something even better and more interesting. So in a way, to welcome Odile back to the school is some very complicated, almost incestuous thing. So welcome back.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. I did not know this strange thing about the French people, transgression and professionalism. I don't know. Because we did the revolution, maybe? Yes, okay. So, you wanted that I call my lecture what, or why, or something like that. I don't know why, but it's what. And I start by showing you this image about what I look at from my place in Brittany, when I'm looking at the sea, because I really love horizon, and especially the horizon line. For me, the horizon line is a sort of focus, exactly the same that when we are doing architecture, when we are doing a project. And I always refer to this horizon line to explain that going there, when you sail, when you want to, you travel on, you want to go there, so you make the point, you want to reach a point, and you start negotiating to go there with the wind, with the sun, with the currents, with everything. And finally, you go where you wanted to go, but as soon as you reach the point, you discover that the line is in front of you, and you have to continue and you have to go further. So it's exactly the same with projects. As soon as we start a project, we make a point, we discover that we want to go somewhere, And we work, we negotiate with clients, budget, site, etc. And as soon as we go there, we discover that we want to go somewhere else or another one. So this is the same story, in a way. And on the sea, in Brittany especially, we have the Corsair. It's why when Gavin asked me to send a photo of a picture, somebody said in my office, okay, send that. I said, okay. So this is a drawing by Claude Parent, who said that I'm the Corsair in architecture. That the Corsair were the very specific seamen who were appointed by the king to go on the sea and to go fighting the British, especially the English, especially. And finally, they won a lot of time. Sometimes the British won, but finally the Corsair from Saint-Malo won a lot. So I'm glad to be a Corsair. And I start by showing you, I don't have an ideology and history and theory to tell you. I just start by my project immediately. And this is a little drawing that I did to the people in my office for many years. It was to explain to them what is the dynamic equilibrium. And the dynamic equilibrium for me is really something that which is really one of the feelings of my work. I want to give the impression that something is destabilizing when you are in a very static world of architecture. And this is, and when I have been invited by an art gallery to open the first show of this gallery. I didn't want to show architecture because it's an art gallery, and I said, okay, we will build this little sketch to explain what is our feeling in architecture. So, and we built it by doing that object, which is composed by two bubbles. One is a big balloon of 2 meters diameter, and the other one is a small aluminum ball filled with sand, and in between we have a 6 meters long span, which is 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters, just put on above a column of 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters, and this without fixation, and it's so precisely calculated that and the balloon is so precisely not touching anything but filling the space, that when you pass along, because you move the air, the balloon is moving a little bit. So that means that this equilibrium is really unstable, could be unstable in an instant, in a second. So this is what I like, and this is really the experimenting of architecture. What can I do that way? Rome, I have to speak about Rome. So Rome, for me, when I started to work on this competition, it was an open competition in 2000, and it was, and usually I don't do the open competition because it's loss of time, strong energy, and we never win, something like that. But we had not so many work at this time, so I was thinking, okay, why not? Because it's a museum. The contemporary art in Rome is a bit contradictory, because if you think about Rome, you think about history, archaeology, etc., and nothing really new happened in terms of architecture, except from the beginning of the 2000s, with a lot of new buildings, some, not a lot, some new buildings by Fuchs, Zaha, Meyer, etc. And so when I first was thinking about this museum, about this competition, I was thinking about the city of Rome itself, because it's a museum for the city. And the city of Rome is, for me, Rome is a mineral city. It's a place where you don't see really the green, because when you go there, but except you don't see, this is really stones everywhere. But except when they open some doors of the palaces, and you discover that behind the doors, behind the palaces, there are very luxurious gardens, and there is a big garden of the place, which is a villa. What is the name? I don't remember. A big one. But when you go up on the hills and when you go up on the roof of the houses, you discover that there is sometimes gardens above. And the gardens are on the terraces, because on the top of the buildings in Rome are used by the people to be private terraces and using as gardens in a way. And they live on the terrace. and the city of Rome is really chaotic because when you look over, it's not like Paris. Paris is like a big cake, flat, cut by knives, and Rome is much more like that. It never has been reorganized, and by chance. And in the streets, they are very tortuous like that, very narrow, and the light is dancing in the street. In Paris, the light is like a ray through all the streets. So it's really, really different. And some objects are going up in the city, like the Vatican. And okay, so it's really a particular place. And we were supposed to, we were asked to work on this place, like where there is this red circle, close to the old Roman walls, and close to the station, the Termini station. No, this is not that one. This is that one, the Termini station, the gardens of the Villa Borghese, that you can look, that you can pass through. It is a very public garden, a huge, huge one. There is one, this one. And you see there are greens, but the greens is not seen from the street. You see that above. And this is an area where the tissue of the city is a bit organized from the 19th century, because this is not that one. You told me don't put your finger here, okay. Okay, so I try to take care. So, and it's really, it was an old brewery before, and they renovated partly for organizing a new gallery for modern and contemporary art. And after that, they did the competition for the big wing, and this one to transform this museum in a contemporary art museum. Bonjour Bernard. It's nice to come. So this was the place where when I came at the beginning. It was ordinary building, but industrial, very close to the very center of Rome. And they asked us to keep the facade, the front facade on the streets. You know, the state was not very good, but I had to keep the structure, the steel structure, and the columns and the beams somewhere in the building, because they wanted to keep that, which is not interesting, but we had to keep that. And they already renovated this part, painting in yellow the building, and covered the courtyard by this glass roof. So it's not really nice, this yellow, I don't like it. And at the end, we repainted in black. And we started by doing some models, because we always work by models, and we do models where at a very small scale, and we start organizing objects and volumes on it without, which is not the project. This is a research that we do to try to find the way how to manipulate the site, and how to manipulate the site, and discussing like a continuous workshop for 1, 2, 3 weeks, it depends. And we discuss all together, and we decide at the end to do something like that. That means filling the site and covering the site by a big roof. And this roof, in reference to the terraces that I showed you before, will be a big terrace. And this terrace will be a square. Because in this area from the 19th century, there is no square in or the city of Rome is really a city that you travel from square to square through the old tissue. And in that part, they didn't have a square. So we decided to cover the site, and depending on the program underneath, we had to different height to fulfill, and it's why the site is not a flat surface. The roof is a soft surface with different levels. So this was the first step of the competition, and we have been selected for the last 5, and we continue to work on different details for the pass rails, for the organization of the auditorium in the middle that we wanted to have, and with pass rail going differently in the middle, because we continue to work on models. And at the end, this was the last model for the second phase, and we won the competition. And you see that the roof is not flat, not only that part, but this is, and this part too. And in the middle, we have this glass roof, and the glass roof is a fountain with water running on it. And we have been asked to keep a garden on the site, even if it didn't have a garden before. And we decided to have a very little hole inside this roof with the trees on the floor, on the ground floor, and the leaves above on the terrace. And to have just this volume going up a little bit from this facade that we had to keep and going up. And because we were allowed to cut the facade on at the corner to create a new entrance, to have a glass box at the entrance as a cafe in the street. Because as everywhere in Rome and in Italy, we have cafe in the streets. So this is axonometry where you can understand. This is organized on the site. And this is the main exhibition room of 1,000 square meters. It was asked in the brief, and it's really at the corner of these two streets. And it's really regular in a way. Because when I started to work on this competition, on this project, I was remembering a discussion that I read once between Daniel Buren and Frank Gehry, where Frank Gehry in the beginning of the 90s were asking to Daniel Buren, does a Museum of Contemporary Art has to be a neutral white box? And Daniel Buren said, not necessarily, because you can have a space, where you can have an architectural space which is not a neutral glass box, where the artist which is resisting to the artist, and the artist has to react to this space. But I was thinking that if the space is too much resisting, the artist has not enough freedom. But at the same time, if you are too neutral, this is nothing. So I was trying to negotiate in between these two ideas to have a normal angle and something different with this wall in between the main exhibition room and the foyer, to keep the foyer in the middle, to have this foyer differently with different type of walls, to have this with passerelles and to have different levels of promenade inside the space. And not only for that, but to have a passerelle going from the foyer inside the exhibition room to go up to the terrace, coming from the middle of the space, of the height of the space in the foyer, going up to the terrace on the top. Because the terrace is also a public square where you can go without going inside the museum. You can take this room for the former courtyard to go up, to live on the space, to go to the restaurant under this roof structure that I had to keep in front of the fountain, as everywhere in the square in Rome, and to take a stair here to go down to the street. That means crossing the space by the square on the top of the building without going in the museum. But at the same time, when you go there, if you didn't have seen the exhibition, you can have some view through the glass part of the roof, and you discover that there is an exhibition, there is some art space that you want to look at, and you go inside the museum. So this is a sort of a promenade where you can have different ways to travel the building. So this is a corner in the middle of the, as I said, in the street, and because the street is turning at this point, the cafe is really, when you are in the middle of the street. So, and we had a strong discussion with historical monument architects in Rome to paint it in white, because they wanted that I paint it in yellow, as they are doing everything in yellow. So I said, no, we will do it in black. And as soon as I said black, they said, no, we have to find a negotiation. So I said, okay, can we go to the white? And finally we did the white. So the entrance is there. So you go under the cafe, and you cross this little courtyard with the trees to go to this door, and this is the new entrance of the museum. And in between, the glass box is open to this garden too, and the cafe facing the south could be totally open, so to be under, to take a coffee under the sun. Yes, in the night. And you have different passerelles to travel the museum, to look at this object in the middle, which is the auditorium, with the space above. And this space above is just underneath the fountain, which is a glass roof. And in the night, the fountain is lighting up the terrace, and in the day, the fountain is lighting in the foyer. And the object of the auditorium is a monolith but the monolith is not regular. It's really shaped like to be unstable. And we dig, we slope the floor underneath to create this levitation in a way, or this destabilization, to make it more stronger in the space. And when you are above, in that space, you are like being in a boat in the middle of the space of the foyer. And this foyer has been painted in black. It was a big, I hesitated at the beginning. I have to confess that I hesitated to do it, because I was thinking, do I have to apply to everyone the punishment that I give to me, to be black? But in a way, yes, because of this question of being neutral with the white, I was thinking that if I paint it in black, this is another neutral color. But it's a stronger one. And this stronger one will have resistance, a stronger resistance for the art, and the art has to be stronger to be in front. And now they hang art on these walls, and it works very well. And inside the auditorium, everything is red. But as outside it was matte, inside is bright. It's really a total bright surfaces everywhere. And we designed everything. We designed the seats, we designed the tables, we designed the lamps. And this is the main exhibition room. As I told you, a more neutral place, in a way, the white one, but with the roof black because it's very high, because it goes to 11 meters high, and everything with the pipes, with the shafts, with the lighting, and all the structural system has to be hidden, so painting in black, it disappears. So, and this space is open with this passerelle to have different views and different perspectives on the art exhibited in it, like that. And all this roof is just supported by 5 columns. This is 3,000 square meters supported by 5 columns, and the walls, the peripheral walls. Because I wanted to have no columns, nothing, no structure seen inside the building. To have a floating or a flying roof over this big surface. And the toilets. I like to design the toilets. And the toilets are being thought as in reference to Playtime, this movie by Jacques Tati. Have you seen the movie? Yes, I'm sure. This movie is a movie where done in the '67, where Jacques Tati put all his ideas about modernity, what modernity coming. And this ultra-modernity coming was supposed to be shiny, very, very soft, no asperities. Everything is bright, everything is smooth, everything, you don't see anything to hang, to resist to you. And in that movie, and one of the first sequences of the movie, the main character, who is played by Jacques Tati himself, is going to an offices building, and in the waiting room where he goes, everything is covered by steel. The floor, the walls, and the ceiling. And he wears leather soles under his shoes, and it's really soundy. So I was thinking, okay, my toilets will be like a container going in under the old structure, and to have it all in bright inox, outside and inside, and with big mirrors on both sides, opposite side of the central space, we will repeating the space infinitely. And in the middle, we have this white box, which is like an island, with a landscape depressing over. And when you want to go out from the toilets, you have to wash your hands. So you go there, and you make dancing your hands above this object. And when you cross infrared tester, the water is coming up from one of these little dots. And as soon as the water is coming up, the box is becoming red. and you find the soap where is here, and when you go on the extremity, you can manipulate your hands and crossing another infrared tester, and this is a dryer. So you have to make dancing your hands above this surface to wash your hands and dry your hands. So this is the library, the bookshop. And we designed the handles, the buttons, everything. And this is the roof. So the roof is really huge, and it's covered by and the stone of this roof is the basalt. And the basalt is the stones of all the south of Italy. It's the stones that you have everywhere on the pavement in the street, and because this is this volcanic stone. And this stone is on the pavement outside, and it's coming inside on the foyer, on the floor of the foyer, and on the floor of the terrace, to make the city coming in and to connect the museum and the space inside with the city. So there is continuity of floors outside and inside. And here, this is the box, the glass box with the fountain, and this is the main glass part of the roof, where you can look through a little bit to have a glimpse about the exhibition underneath. But this glass is not transparent. It's a laminated glass with stainless steel mesh inside. And we made 5 different textile. And the more dark is here, to not really look through, to go there and to be able to look through. But if you are a bit further, you can't look through. So this is the size of the terrace, and in the night is different. And you see that the wall, the yellow one, now are black or dark. It was a negotiation. So we designed also the lamps for the terrace of the restaurant. Inside the restaurant, in the roof, and the cafe with the seats and the table. And what is really interesting now, because usually when you have a square in Rome, you are on the ground floor of the buildings. Here you are at the second level of the buildings, the second floor, the third floor, in terms of calculating. It's at the third floor. So the people from the third floor, the flats, look immediately on the terrace, on the square. And you don't see them on the ground floor. The opera. So we are in the Opera Garnier in Paris. So that means very protected monument, historical monument that I didn't realize so much. Okay, it's an historical monument, but for me it's not as much as one in Rome, but okay, finally it was much more. Because not only the monument, the building itself is protected, but also the space, the urban space around. Because Charles Garnier designed the facade around. So the urban space also is protected. So I received a call. Do you want to do the restaurant in the Opera Garnier, from the client who won the competition to manage the restaurant, to run the restaurant inside. It was a very strange afternoon. I was on the seaside. It was receiving the school, this phone like that. So immediately I said, okay, well, can we meet in the beginning of the week? So I went and we met, and I discovered that it was at this part, which is, no, we are on the east facade of the opera, and this rotonde was before the exterior rotonde where the carriage were coming in to deposit the people inside the opera, and to be protected from the rain. So it was an open space, and we had to close it to make the restaurant, and to create a second floor inside, because the client wanted to have 160 seats for the dining room, and it's impossible to have it on the ground floor, so we had to create a second floor. So it was prohibited to touch any columns, to touch the stones, to touch the cupola. It was prohibited to do a facade in between these arches, inside these arches, because it has to be perceived as something outside. It has to become something without a facade, without anything. So my first idea was immediately to start to do this line, like an undulating line behind the columns, not in between, but behind, to curve the glass and to be able to have auto-stable glass by these curves. And as soon as we did that, we said we continue by drawing curves with avoiding to touch everything in the space. And this is the mezzanine. And this line has been negotiated with the historical monument architects, 3. Because we wanted to bring the mezzanine to the facade, and they wanted me to push back, to leave this pendentif, the top of the cupola, seen from the ground floor. So it was really a negotiation. We did 2, 3 times. Okay, I go there, they asked me to go back. I go there, and okay. At the end, we went to an agreement for this line. So it's a very strange way to work, because it was really a negotiation. And we put all the lines at minimum 50 centimeters or 30 centimeters from the columns to have the possibility to have everything cleaning, etc. So everything is coming only from the floor. The only thing that we can change, we can remove, was the floor, because it was an exterior floor and it has to become an interior floor. So we had to change the height of this floor to make it in continuity with the inside of the opera, because here these are the doors to come into the foyer of the opera, with a little gallery here, but this is directly to the opera. So when there is the show, they open the doors, and in the entr'acte, people are coming in directly to the restaurant. And so there is a continuity, but during the day, not every day. And we discovered these stairs because it was enclosed in between 2 walls, and nobody knew if the stair was still there. So we discovered it, and it was in perfect state, and to organize the way to go to the toilets at this level. So the only glass that we framed was for the door, because it's a place on the both sides where the glass was straight, not curved, so it could be auto-stable. So we had to frame it and to anchor it inside the joint of the stone, not inside the stone because it was prohibited, but in between the stones. And we discovered that we could have the glass going directly to the top, but it was impossible because that means 8.5 meters, but it was impossible to manipulate them inside the cupola. So we cut them at 6 meters height, which is the height of the corniche, and to have this 6 meters and to continue after that. So the glass is stabilized in between a big plate of steel in the bottom line for 30 centimeters, and with this one at 6 meters, and anchored a little bit to the top of the corniche with these little beams of 2 centimeters in stainless steel. And the mezzanine. The mezzanine is built in steel with all the columns of the mezzanine close to the other columns to avoid to have any columns in the middle of the space. That means that from the longer one, the longer balcony of this mezzanine, we have 10 meters of cantilever. And everything is in cover. After that, we had molded plaster and painted in white, but a very light, a very little powder of painting to feel the minerality of the plaster, because we are in a mineral place with the stones, and I wanted to keep this minerality. And the client was really concerned by the question of acoustic for the restaurant. It's why the carpet, which is inside the mezzanine, come down the stairs and go a sort of a shape in the middle of the space. Now they avoid the napkins by chance. And we design everything. We design not everything, the seats and the table only. And we had to for caring about the acoustic, we did some curves out, the inverted curves inside pocket, to have not a flat surface but an undulating surface over, and we have holes, and we have an acoustic plaster on the B side. And the light is coming from these pockets that we created in the columns to have indirect lighting, to avoid anything technical in the space. This is on the back, the lounge. And the lounge is just limited by these long sofas that we designed. And there are the doors to go to the opera. And you see the pocket for the lighting. And above, everything is red. It's really an inside space where everything is covered by red. The blankets, the vertical part of the mezzanine, the seats, the legs of the seats, the table. They put napkins at the beginning, now they avoid the napkins. And you can choose the place where you want to sit. Because there is this shape of the mezzanine describes different spaces inside the mezzanine. So you can choose to go down, to sit in the middle of in the street, because of the transparency of the facade, you sit in the street. But above, you can choose a place. You can decide to go in the balcony. You can go in the middle. You can go in another corner. You can go on the back. So you decide where you want to go, and when you want to have dinner or lunch, you can have a view to the other below. But always you are referring to this pendentif because it was what the historical monument architects asked us. And now we are in Rennes, in Brittany, where we are finishing this project, this building, which will be open in 2 months now, and 3 months. And this is another little historical contemporary art museum, a FRAC. It's called FRAC, like the regional collection for for contemporary art. And it was in a garden, in a park, which was under construction when we did the competition. And we have been designed this site, a rectangle. And the program was, the brief of the program was so dense that we had to fulfill the volume dedicated for this building. So that means a parallelepiped. And so I felt a little bit uncomfortable to do this parallelepiped, and it's why I decided to cut it with this oblique. And this oblique is not only cutting it on this horizontally, but also vertically from the glass roof on the top to the basement and the storage. That means 30 meters high. And we had to take care of this sculpture. This sculpture is the only three-dimensional sculpture of an abstract artist, French artist, called Aurélie Nemours. And she's always working with the mathematics. She was always working on mathematics because now she died. And this piece is called the 21st century alignment. And there are stones of 4.5 meters height with 72 by 81 sections, and they are installed with a certain angle on number 9. And she gave some constraint for the building. She asked not to light her piece from the building and to have a silencious facade. So having the artist providing the constraint to the architects is not usual. But it was, at the beginning, it was not so bad, because we decided to cut the facade, to have a silencious facade, a flat surface. This roof and this attic was asked by the urban regulation. And we decided to have a flat surface on the facade, to have a line in the middle, and this line is exactly at the same height as these stones. And in between, and both materials, the stainless steel black that you don't see, this is black, but it's really black. But it's black here and it's becoming mirrored on the top, but it's a black mirror. And the glass here is black at the beginning and becoming more transparent, but you don't see it in the day, only in the night. It looks sometimes absolutely black. And this is and this surface is covering the main exhibition room, which is 500 square meters and 50 meters long. And this is in cantilever above the foyer underneath. And everything is hung to this block on the back, which is black concrete. And in between we have the cut. When we enter the building, and on the B side of the building, on the one side, the little side, we enter inside the building, and we are on the back of the auditorium. As I said now, it's a bit like the macro, but it's really different at the same time. It has been done after the macro, but it has the same particularity, but at the same time it's really different because it's more dense, smaller, half size. And you see the space, which I described to you, very high and very long, but you can't go there because you can go down to the storage, but you can't go up. You have to turn around this space, to go all the way along the facade, in between the auditorium and the facade, in this very narrow space, which is 1.5 meters wide in the middle. And you have to go all the facade long to go to the end and to discover the space. And the space is with ramps. And these ramps are traveling you to the top of the building to go from one side to the other side. And in the middle you have a huge, huge elevator, transparent, a bit transparent, and to travel the people and to carry the art pieces. And the auditorium is not touching the ceiling underneath the exhibition room. In between we have 80 centimeters when it's more close. And you see through the window. You see through the glass facade, because even if the glass is black, seen from outside, from inside, you can look through. So this silencious black box outside, inside is really different. So it was during the construction, you see this is a huge beam of 5 meters high, all the way long, and with only 2 columns, one on each extremity, to support in cantilever this part of the building and this structure of the auditorium. So some views of today with the black stainless steel mirrored inside the space on this side. So you can't understand. It's normal. I don't want that you understand the space and pictures. You see a little bit, but you don't understand because it's reflecting. When you see that, the black is reflecting a lot. Okay, you will see next time. And we are building also this one building in Lyon. And in Lyon we have 2 rivers, the Rhône and the Saône. And in between we have a peninsula. And the peninsula was the former industrial harbor. Now the harbor has left. And they are developing a very huge new part of the city center for 1 million square meters. And the company who is the manager of the rivers in France was the owner of the site here. And they organized a competition to build pavilions, to keep and to renovate the old industrial building, like the sugar, for the custom, for the salt, because it was a place where in the industrial harbor before we were transporting and changing and exchanging salt and sugar, etc. And to build new pavilions. So Jacob and McFarlane, maybe you heard about them, won these 2. Ricciotti won this one, and I won this one at the end. And this is the museum by Copy Melblanc, Paul Fricks. And new buildings everywhere here. When it will be a big, long promenade, and we have a bridge at the end, and at the end with the bridge is going very, very low, So we have to have a sort of a ceiling when we on the promenade on the river bank, which is very low. So I decided not to stay quietly on my side, but to turn the above part of my building in cantilever to go to the river, to the bank, to the limit of the river of the bank, and to have my building like a first ceiling, and after that you continue and you pass underneath the bridge to go to the park at the end. And to build that, we had to use this huge steel structure in reference to this object, which are the cranes to transfer the goods in between the boats and the harbor. So that means that all this part of the building, these 4 floors, are in cantilever on all the way of the width of the bank. That means 24 meters. And the ground floor and the mezzanine are in a transparent box, and above it's a transparent box but with a printed photo. We have been asked, because it was a competition, we have been asked to work with an artist, or to choose an artist or 2 artists for our building. So I asked to Felice Varini, who is a Swiss artist living in Paris, to work with me. And I told him, you know, I will do a box, and you will change my facade. I give you my facade and you do what you want on it, or with it, or you can disturb the perception of my facade. So as soon as I asked him that, he said to me, don't ask questions, don't give a program to an artist, we do what we want. I said, okay, you do what you want. Immediately he answers that to me, because he's a bit always like that. So, and he decided that, okay, architecture is there to erase the landscape behind, so I will take a photo and make the architecture disappearing again. That means reapplying the landscape that is behind in front of on the facade. So it took 4 photos on the 4 directions, and we reapplied them, but in black and white, on the facade on the building, inside the laminated glass. So it was the first images, but now this is the real image that we will have on the facade, with the peninsula, with the 2 rivers and continuity. To build that, as I said, we have a huge atrium in the middle, and we have these 3 huge pylons inside, one with a staircase and the 2 others with lifts. And this is in the huge space, and because the atrium is in one way in longitudinal in this volume, but when we turn the volume above, we turn the atrium too. So the atrium is going above the bank, and when people will walk on the bank, on the river bank, they will look through the building to the top by a glass roof here, a glass floor here. So now the structure is on site. This is the crane that I showed you before, and this is the site, my structure. We will go fast. And this structure is enormous. So this is 1 floor, but this height is 5 meters. And look at these tiny, narrow columns, which will be hanging the floors below. Look at the height of the beams before, when a man, this is really enormous. It's really impressive, this structure. So it will be finished at the beginning of next year, because we are just at this side. And we designed the lamps for that building. Because in the offices building now, because of the LEED regulation and demand and all this green ecology, etc., we need to avoid the false ceiling, because we have to play or to deal with the inertia of the building, the self-inertia of the building, and we can't avoid the false floor because we need for the cables, and we have to avoid the false ceiling. But when we avoid the false ceiling, we have acoustic problem, and at the same time we have to have lighting. So I mix both by creating this lamp, which is acoustically solving the problem and at the same time lighting the space. and it's now developed by Luce Plan. Okay, and when developing the project, I've been asked to think about something floating in front of the building on the river zone, and for a restaurant. And I was thinking, I was hesitating about what to do in front of my building, which is a square, which is a parallelepiped, and I was thinking of bubbles. So this could be a restaurant. The entrance, the toilets, the kitchen, the lounge, the restaurant, and the cafe. And the cafe. That? The lounge with basket for the terrace, the kitchen, the restaurant, dining room, the bar, and the terrace as basket. The client said that he will do it after. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We never know. And in 2007, I won a competition for Tangier in Morocco for the passenger sea terminal. The king of Morocco decided to build a huge harbor. It was a containers harbor here, which is now working very well, and to develop a second phase for a container harbor in between to transfer the sea passenger terminal from the city of Tangier to this place. We are 30 kilometers east from the city of Tangier. We are just in front of Gibraltar. This is where the Detroit is narrow. But at the same time, it's a very dangerous sea because it's really at the place where you have two tectonic plates playing, and there's a very strong wind every day coming from the northwest, and quite often a very strong southeast warm wind. That means that the northwest wind is salted and the southeast is sandy. It's not so easy to build and to maintain a building in that case. So we won the terminal, and as soon as we won the terminal, we discovered that we had to design everything, including all the development of the harbor itself, because they didn't have plan. So we had to so it's a very huge place where it was a mountain going directly to the sea. That means that they cut the mountain to do steps inside. And the first step is for a motorway, which is going directly from Tangier to the container harbor, and to have the entrance of the terminal with all the tickets placed for the tickets, for the custom, for the police, etc., one way and the other way, and the way back, to have the possibility to bring cars and buses to deposit for the terminal, and to have a train, because we have a train station also in the terminal, going after that to the container harbors. And when we are here, we are still 15 meters above the sea. When we are here, we are 30 meters above the sea. That means this is really big stairs. And at the end, we have that. When they cut everything, they put everything in the sea, and they create these platforms. Here we have a gas terminal, and this is the place where we have to manipulate and to organize the station for the parking for the cars and the buses and the trucks, because there are many exchanges by trucks also between Africa, because this is between North Africa and Europe. So we decided to put the terminal here, hanging to this platform, and to have horizontal passerelle connecting waiting room, lounge close to the sea, and connecting by other passerelles, little satellites to go to the ferries. Like that. And at the beginning, we were thinking about trees on the car park, because we have to provide shadow for people waiting for many hours sometimes on this place. It could be very hot, but they decided to avoid any trees, because they manipulate and they change the car park all the time. It depends on the quantity of ferries waiting, etc. So at the end, it will be very dry. And because of that, we propose to lift up the satellites at the height of the door entrance in the ferries, which is 7 meters above the ground, and to have the waiting lounge also lifting up to provide shadow underneath, and to give people places with shadow to wait when they are waiting in their cars, to go underneath to find beverage and toilets. Inside the terminal and the lounge with the passerelle. And this passerelle at 7 meters high, it's also to provide people a flat or nearly horizontal corridors, because usually when you go to a terminal harbor, you have to go and you travel with your luggage. You are not like an airport where you deposit your luggage to the belt. You are traveling with your luggage, and you can travel with a lot of luggage. And you have to go up and down, and it's not very comfortable. And we wanted to have much more comfortable ways to go to the ferries for people walking with their luggage. So this is a section of the waiting lounge. For the moment, this project is stopped because of economical reasons, but okay, I hope that it will be starting back. We don't know yet. We are in China, in Nanjing, and this is summer, very hot summer and very humid summer, like tropical with 90% of humidity and very hot seasons. And we are outside Nanjing in a little mountain, we can call it mountain, where inside that, in grots, in caves, discover one of the former bodies, former skeleton for the men of Nanjing. And they decided to do a museum about this story about the human, and about the story of the Earth, story of the development of Earth, etc. So we did the competition last year, and we won it. So now we are developing the project, and because it's this hill and it's really concerned by the Earth, we decided to install our museum really inside the mountain, to have just the lines of the mountain, to play with the lines of the mountain to describe the different levels of the museum. To play with the lines, to play with the geographical lines. Because it's supposed to have 10 million people every year in that museum. And that means a lot of people going in, so you have to have, it's a huge spaces, and you have to have different escalators and fast way to travel the museum. And after that you have huge spaces outside, and it's a place where they will have some hotels, they will have some commercial places, they will have some demonstration from digging the mines, for everything, because it's a place where everything is a mountain, but at the same time everything is empty inside because they have many, many caves. So this is the middle. The same figures, I mean, because we were at the end of the competition. Okay, put that there and we will see what happens. So now it's a coffee, it's a restaurant, because now we won, so we have to do something with that. But we have to have a cinema, a Cinemax. We have to have a theater. We have to have. It's really a very, very commercial place at the same time. And they want that for end of next year. That means very fast. Worms was half of this size, and it's 10 years. And in China, double size, 2 years. Okay. But we did already something in China. It was in Shanghai, where once in 2006 I've been asked to go for a jury in the middle of China, in central China. And as soon as I said yes, they sent me a second email and asked me to bring a project. I said, a project of what? I said, a pavilion. I said, okay, a pavilion in China, it's not so easy, it's very small. So, but could I receive the site and the purpose of this pavilion? And I received files for A0 files, but with a site of white paper, with just a little blue surface, and it was supposed to be a pond. And this was my site. And I asked, yes, but what will happen around? But it will be a big showroom for 4 hectares with buildings to show modern furniture. What I will do? The pavilion, the entrance pavilion, okay. So So I brought a project 2 weeks later because I said, okay, what can I do in 2 weeks for 1,500 square meters, which is very small for China, on this pond, which was smaller than the size of the pavilion, so I had to go inside and above. And I brought them a project, and they said, do you have other choices? I said, no, I bring only ones. Okay, but we will do it. So I start to discuss with them how we can negotiate that and how we can do that. I said, okay, let me do the structure because I know this is quite not so easy, and I will do that a bit complicated because I wanted to stay on the way on my project, and I will come 3 or 4 times. I said, okay, you are allowed to come 3 or 4 times. We will pay for you for that. Okay, and it was May 2006, and in September 2007 I received the photos, and it was exactly what I designed. That means this pavilion. And I discovered in the photo the building that I didn't see. I didn't see the drawing, I didn't see the plan, I didn't see anything when I started to work. And a British firm in China. Really postmodern. Nicely done. Yellow and pink. Okay. That's all. This is just a pavilion, but built as I wanted. And now we are working on a project in Paris for an offices building on the McDonald's warehouse. It's not McDonald's for McDo, it's McDonald's, the former, one of the former military from the Napoleon III, and with the name of the boulevard. And now the name of the boulevard. It's a huge storage warehouse of 400 meters long, which from the 60s, which is only 1 floor up above the ground, and they took off, they bought it, the city of Paris bought it, and asked 15 architects to work on one part of this building. So here we will have housing with a cut, no, the housing is, yes, housing out there, 2 offices building, mine for what they call grocery for companies, for firms, for little firms, for young firms, and schools and sports for the public sports for the city. And this is a project by Kengo Kuma. This is housing by Porzan Park, and after that we have a collection of architects. And mine is here. And we have to discuss in between us, but we didn't really discuss together. And because we couldn't meet them, and they were doing housing, we are doing offices, this is something else. And Rem Koolhaas did the master plan of that. And the former architect of Rem Koolhaas now is in charge of the development of the project. And this warehouse is only 2 levels, as I said before. Now they are developing a car park of 2 levels below. They are developing a commercial center inside the warehouse, except in my part. And we are building above 6 levels, 6 floors above. And I'm the only one who is building not only these 6 floors, but also inside the warehouse until the ground floor. So it's quite a complicated project, quite a complex project with so many work at the same time, so many projects at the same time on only one building. And I propose, because it's for firms, for new technology, new media, to do it another way, because Rem Koolhaas said crystal, mineral, crystal, mineral. That's all. So this is a former warehouse. We have to develop the ground floor facade with transparency. We have to be transparent and we have to be opaque. So I said, okay, because this is particular companies, particular firms, can we do bubbles? And it took 1 year to convince not only the city, but the client that bubbles could be done for windows, for offices. It was really complicated. Really, and because of, I said, I can say ecological, sustainable reason, but it's not really that because it was my proposal. I colored it in white on the south face and black on the north one. And in the middle, in between, this facade will be going from black to white and white to black. So just that. Because you know, it's just developing facade, so why not playing with the facade? So now we have the permit and we have everything to do it. And I become more and more used of doing floating objects because I've been asked to develop a project on the River Seine in front of Le Grand Palais, in between the two bridges, in this little narrow place. At the beginning, it was to develop two programs in one program, one for offices and one for events. And the two have the same size, 600 meters for both. And I wanted to not to have these two equal volumes or equal surfaces or equal everything, because as I said before, I like disequilibrium. So I was researching about what could be the two different equal forces against but opposite equal forces. And I discovered that in the sciences, in the astrophysics, the astrophysician describes the place where the universe is going to the black holes as a distortion of the space, and it's called anisotropy. So the distortion of the space in between the universe and the black hole. So I was looking at this drawing and I said, okay, why not doing that? So we are developing a surface which is inside an atrium, a very little narrow atrium, and going around the place for the offices, and after that going down to describe the interior or the outside of the interior of the event place. It's it's like two objects. One is this one for offices, covered by this reflective steel, and the other one is this one. And the two have 600 square meters. This one is above the Seine, the river, and this one is down into the river. So now they decided that they will not do it as offices, and they asked me to develop that as a little hotel, very chic and very privileged. So I hope it will be done. And I won another floating object. I become the architect for floating objects. This is in Laval, the place, the city where I was born, and the mayor once asked me to enter a competition for 500 square meters for last summer, for the tourism offices inside the office, in the middle of the city. So this city has a tradition of what they call the, I don't remember what is the name in French, but it's objects in wood where the people, the ladies were coming in to wash the textile inside the river, and when they were hanging to make it drying. So this is a wood structure floating above the river. There is a tradition that they still have 2 or 3 very old of these objects. And I was thinking that we can build for once in wood, because I don't build so much in wood. I know that instead you build in wood, but I don't build in wood usually. And to cover it with a surface, a white surface, translucent, which would be like a lighting, like a lamp inside in the night, and like an opaque object in the day. So, and to have it with some faces, some angles. And inside there is this vortex with a big meeting room in the middle and open space all over. Okay, I pass very fast. This is 3 bedrooms that I designed with an artist in Beijing for an hotel, and it has not been done finally. But it was interesting to work with an artist, and this artist that we were 10 architects working for that hotel, and we had each of us some bedrooms. And we were all supposed to work with an artist. And I chose an artist on a list, and this artist is a woman, a Chinese artist who is living in between New York and Beijing. And we played with the way to live inside the bedroom. So we decided to do this bedroom as a sort of an outside bedroom, but inside, like a garden, like a place with rocks, and to to have something like that in the middle of the bedroom, where you can find your bed somewhere, your sofa somewhere, your bathroom somewhere in the cave, to discover, like, to create like a landscape inside the bedroom. To have another one, which is a suite with two bedrooms, two spaces, and very high level ceiling, with to have the bed inside the bubble and the hanging under the ceiling, to have a staircase going with a path rail to the main bed, and to have the second bedroom behind the wall, and to play with black and red. So this is the upper level. And okay, what happens? What can I do with that? No. How can I shut that down? It will go back? You think so? In theory, okay. We will see. So this is the red part with the staircase. No, I can't do anything else. Ah, maybe, yeah, I can do something. Yes, okay. It's done. Thank you. So this is some views, but okay, and the black one. And I did a boat. I received also a call once for somebody asked me, oh, do you know something about sailing? I said yes. And he was Italian. And he said to me that he wanted to build a unique boat. And he was searching for an architect. So it came to me because I did an interview to a magazine, in a magazine about what is the difference between Paris and Rome. And I said, okay, Paris, you can look at the map, you follow the axes, the boulevards, the avenue, etc., and you find the way. In Rome, you look at the map, forget it, you throw it away. You have to navigate the city, and it's like navigation and sailing, etc. So he said, okay, oh, this architect does maybe knows something about sailing. So she called me, he calls me, and I said yes. So we had a meeting in the middle, for a restaurant, in Rome, and for 3 hours we were talking about chocolate, whiskey, food, colors, materials, etc. And at one moment it asked me finally, if we do this boat together, which color it will be? I said, why not black? He said, yes, I agree. But I have to tell you that he was very young, 24 years, tall, and called Leonardo. So it's really a nice story. So one of the questions he asked, I told him my only constraint, I want a flush deck, a total flush deck sailing boat, because it's fantastic. I was remembering all these books that I have about this very famous boat racing the America's Cup at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, and with flush deck, it's fantastic. So this is the boat, and the boat, when I saw the booklets that he showed me at this lunch, I was really like doing like that under the table, because it's 143 feet long, the mast is 50 meters high, and the main sail is 900 square meters. So this is the boat. And we redesigned all the deck, because we wanted a flush deck, a total flush deck. And we redesigned it, and it was really a nice adventure. 3 years, going every month to the shipyard, working with them. They were building the boat when I was drawing, and they were building the mold, and etc. And we were discussing and discussing everything: the structure of the boat, the structure of the inside, how to build everything, etc. It was absolutely fantastic. So it's really a nice story, and it's a better story when I will tell you that every year I go on sailing on it. And it's a dream, you know. But it happens, you know, when you are architect sometimes. You can believe in it. I will show you only. And they wanted to have windows, normal. But I didn't want to have these frame windows as object in the middle of the deck, so I decided to ask to have only this sheet of black glass inside the deck, on both sides of the boat, to have the natural light coming in on both sides, And because the artificial light is in the ceiling on the B-side, the artificial light is coming up in the night by the same place. So we light the boat, the deck, by this same place during the night. So this is the plan of the interior. So all the red is the surface, the free surface that we created. Because at this lunch we had a discussion about how to live in the boat. We wanted to live in the boat. Usually these huge super yachts are with many, many cabins because people want to rent it. But he didn't want to rent. So by chance, so that means that he wanted just to have the minimum cabins that he needed for himself, for his mother and his sister, and some friends. That means only 4 cabins. And so, plus the crew. The crew is here. 5 people. Yes, I know. All the time it's like that. 5 people living here, and the rest for the family. That means the master bedroom is here, and he wanted to go there because he was a student in music at that time. Now he's doing movies, but now before he was doing music, studying music. So he wanted to compose music on the sea. So he wanted to go sometimes alone, sometimes with his mother and his sister, and sometimes with friends. That means managing the space of the boat as he wanted to go. So we decided to do a loft with sliding partition inside the boat. If you look at the master bedroom, there is a bed, but behind there is a partition, and this partition is not total, but it's quite thick, because inside we have sliding partitions that we can push on both sides to enclose or to separate the bathroom for the bedroom. And here, for example, we have a cabin, but the cabin could be in continuity with the space of the living room here, or it could be enclosed by sliding a partition here and another partition here. And the same here, the same everywhere. So the space is really fluid. You can move your body inside. You are not in narrow corridors as usual. The only corridor that I had to keep is that one, along the engine room. And okay, so this is a corridor that I kept for where we have the shelves for the books and music, and the central space with the kitchen behind, a bar, cut in the middle, the stair to go up on the deck, and if you want to enclose the kitchen, you slide the partition to separate, passing in the middle of the bar. And the master bedroom, we designed the bed. This is the partition behind, and the bathroom. And the bathroom has is the wall at the back is covered by mirror stainless steel to create the impression that the space is bigger and larger. And when you are, and the bathroom has different functions. You could have a shower with the floor perforated. The shower is in the ceiling, so the space becomes a shower. But if you push a button and you want to take a bath, you lift up the deck, the floor, it's here, and you create a bathroom, a bathtub. It's a huge bathtub, so the space becomes a bathtub. The space becomes a shower, or the space becomes a bathtub. And you could be 6 in it if you want, because it's huge. Believe me, it's huge. So we designed the basin. It's reflecting and multiplied because of the reflection of the stainless steel. And we designed everything in this boat. And it's really interesting to work in that boat because you have to work in sections. Because the section is changing every second, every centimeter. So you have to work and to design everything in section. And we wanted to push all the cupboard, everything on the both sides, to open the space, to make the space free inside the boat. Okay. This, I will go fast because I'm quite long, sorry. It was a flat that we did in Beijing in 2004, where for the first architectural biennale, we were 10 architects asked to do the interior of a flat in a tower under construction. And during the biennale, the towers were still under construction, and 10 floors were finished by the flats. And we could do what we wanted. And I wanted to create a fluid and open space for the flat. That means from the kitchen to the dining room, to the living room, to the bedroom. And a continuity of the space without partitioning, except this partition for this bedroom because it was the structure of the building itself. I will show you some pictures about and we designed the tables for in continuity between the kitchen and the dining room. The space with the shelves in front of one of the bedroom. The sofas, the bed, with the bath on the back at the end, and a special partition that we can activate to have transparency or translucidity, if you want. And we design everything again and again. They did everything. Okay. We designed. We won a competition for the UNESCO headquarters in Paris for redesigning the telephone box. And as soon as we won the competition for the telephone box, we have been asked to provide furniture for the main conference hall. So, and the first thing and they asked me to design the bank, the counter. And the counter has to be very long because it's for 500 delegation. No, for 500 people and many delegations for countries. So I did, and when I came and it was the first time when I went inside the UNESCO headquarters, designed by Marcel Breuer and Pierre-Luigi Nervi. I never been before. Believe me, it's a shame. It was in 2000. And because I discovered when I went there that this concrete building, that I don't like because it was in concrete, that is stupid, because I built in steel usually, but this concrete building is absolutely fantastic. You have to visit it because it's a place where Nervi and Breuer played with the sensuality of the concrete, with the voluminousness of the concrete. The concrete is absolutely fabulous. When you have, at the two entrances, you have flying canopies of 15 square meters on two little narrow feet. In this main conference hall, you have columns starting to be round, becoming ovoid and finishing rectangular, or the opposite. Every column is different. When you go inside the main conference room, you are like under a please dress by Issey Miyake, but in concrete. The walls and the ceiling is a pleats in concrete. This is absolutely incredible. So I was really like that when I went there, and I said, my God, now I have to design the counter. And this is a place where they had, at this time, it was in the 50s, and they called it the synthesis of arts. That means that artists and architects are working together, and in that building there are many arts pieces which are absolutely incredible. And in the main exhibition conference room where I have to work, and all when I have to work, there is a huge fresco by Picasso on a wall of 50 square meters. They have a huge tapestry by Le Corbusier, etc. So they asked me to design furniture, to provide furniture and to design the counter, but in reference to that building, but in contemporary. So I was thinking about plastic because the plastic was 50s and 60s were the heroic time of plastic, and I wanted to play with plastic. So my counter is in plastic, and we did that with a little shipyard close to Paris, which was designing little boats. And we did a mold, and we did a twisted shape because of these pleats of concrete. And we chose together with the UNESCO people the color in reference to the fresco of Picasso, where he used this orange. Precisely. And they asked me to provide seats, and I started, because I didn't dare before, but I said, okay, now this time I have to design a seat. So I started by designing a seat and a confidant, that means a two sides seat, and a sofa with having in continuity the back and the seat. And we chose together the color of the leather in reference of one of the colors of Le Corbusier tapestry. But I was thinking that when I started to design that, I was thinking about the snake sofas of Paulin from the 60s. It was a snake which was used in many huge halls or huge museums, but that has disappeared a lot. But it was a continuous sofa of metals. and I wanted to design one seat. So I designed one seat, and if you look carefully over the section, the side, this is exactly the same on every component. So you can combine them and to make it turning inside like a snake inside the space. They asked me a table, so I designed a table, a plastic again, with very thin legs. It's 3 meters long and 70 centimeters wide. But it's with a fold underneath to make the strength, to give the strength to this table. And they ask for paper basket and ashtray, so I folded aluminum that we polished in a way that making disturbing the folds itself. And the gallery asked me something to hang on the wall to like a cupboard. So I did this box that I cut in oblique to have a part sliding and a part lifting up. And in Chaumont-sur-Loire, there is a festival of garden. And in 2009, they decided that the thematic of the gardens is colors. So somebody in my office said, we have to answer with a black garden. I said, okay, why not? Doing a black garden. So we did this garden, which is much more an installation than a garden, with these 20 sheets of glass, black glass, turning around a space filled on the floor by powder of stone, the wheels, rubber, powder of rubber, and a little pond in the middle on a black surface to have like a black hole in the middle. And it's a place where it was at the opening very, very silencious because the sound was absorbed by the floor. And it's a place where the light and the sun is reflecting inside the glass, the black glass, and changing the perception of the glasses, of the sheets of glass. And Louis Vuitton space in Champs-Élysées asked me to intervene in an exhibition to do something on the terrace, and I proposed what I called the jump of the funambule. I don't know the name of funambule in English. The acrobat. And because we are on a terrace just over Paris, and I wanted to give the impression that we can go and fly above Paris. So this is a ramp and 2 sheets of glass on both sides, but it's 4 meters long, and with a film, a 3D film on it that you can't look through when you are going in, but you can look through when you are perpendicular. Okay, I pass. This is an exhibition that an installation that I did for a gallery in an art fair, and the gallery where I did my first what I show you at the beginning, as a dog, and he wanted to have this dog inside his gallery, but with a very bad basket. So I said, okay, I will design for you a basket for your dog. So I did that, which is an aluminium dog basket, and we designed the mattress. And Victor is very happy. And now we designed a bird cage, etc., etc. Thank you. This is something else.
Any questions?
Oh yes, I didn't explain. I was not thinking that there is continuing. It was the gallery where I did this cupboard sent me once a pair of shoes, and these shoes were are the shoes of the Shaolin monk in China, and they sent that to some artists, architects, designers to do something with that. So I deconstruct one of the shoes, and this is the real part of the shoes, and we make it flying like a bat in front of, above the print of the shoe. That's all. This is a flying shoe.
materials and an obsession of colors. Do you think that these two issues are related in the sense that if you are constrained by two colors, let's say, then maybe you can have freedom or curiosity in order to research with different shine of materials, matter, I mean, all these different.
I'm really concerned by building, yes. I love to build, and I'm really concerned by the construction of the building. And it's why I'm really researching and trying to experiment with materials, with the construction itself. And it's true that I look like limited by two colors, but I can use many colors. But for the moment, I use these colors. And the black, you know, as I said before, I didn't dare for many years to use black in my buildings. Because at my very beginning, when I was on site with the clients, at the beginning, when we were choosing the colors, the clients were always asking me, will you put some black inside? Because they were looking at me, I said, no, don't worry, I will not use black. So for many years, I didn't dare to use black because I said I didn't want to apply the punishment for the others. But now I use it. So I decided I can use it, I'm free, and I can use it, and I can impose this color. And at the same time, because it's, as I said, it's a neutral color, but at the same time, it's a sort of, it's really so strong that you have to be very strong in terms of space, in terms of construction, in terms of materiality, if you want to use the black, because black is absorbing everything. And at the same time, I love the red in comparison, in contrast with this black, with the black. And this red is my red, because it's a particular combination for having it. And because it's bright and it's life for me. It's so because everybody associates black to the death, but it's not true, because it's really contradictory color. If you read about the black could be, it's the little dress by Chanel, but at the same time it's the wearing of the priest, and at the same time it's for the rebels, and at the same time for the very traditional people. So it's really contradictory. And but many people associate that to the death, but it's why the red is really the life. I can explain that like that, but it could be another explanation.
As a follow-up to that question, your colors they appear with the texture. So red is bright, and it's a hue of red that is very bright, and it's all kind of tends to be shiny, and white tends to be powdery, and black tends to be reflective and kind of. When you think about those colors, do they appear to you not just as colors, but as colors with a material quality, or are them colors?
It's a process of elaboration during the construction, or at the beginning for the process of the conception, and after that the process of the construction. Because at the beginning, when I was doing this red box in the macro, the museum, you know, I didn't think about the brightness inside. It's on site that slowly comes this idea that it could be outside matte and inside bright. Because I was wishing for what will be the effect of that. So as soon as we started, I said, okay, the effect is fabulous. So really, it's really a process, and it's on the way. It's not a preconceived idea that I have at the beginning. Because if you explain everything to your client at the beginning, they are afraid. So you don't have to explain to them, and at the same time, I strongly believe that a building is not finished when you design it. You have designed it. You have to continue to design and to think about it, and to develop your own ideas until the end. So I continue to develop my ideas until the end. And I discover myself what I want to do. It's really a process. It's not a direct line. It's sometimes very sinuous. And
the last question.
I'm just curious to find out how your experience of directing the École Spéciale has changed you as a designer, as an architect altogether, if it has changed.
Is it changed?
It's changed.
As a change.
Changed.
For me?
Yes.
Yes, because it's living every day in working, you know, because... no, I don't understand which change. The change for me?
It's been great because it's change your work.
My work? I'm not sure. No, I go faster for having... It's true, because I have no time. so I have to do that very fast now. But at the same time, no, because you know my school also is not an ideologic school. There is not a place. This is not a place where you have a sort of preconceived idea or what is architecture. It has been since the beginning of this school 150 years ago, a very open mind school, a place where you can have different currents, different chapels in terms of architecture. So we have different types of people teaching there. So it's not only one way of thinking in that school. So I don't have to follow one way, and I don't have to react to that, and I don't have to support one way of thinking. So I can be free myself inside the school. And I was teaching for 15 years before being the director of the school in that place. And I discovered that this place is really a place for freedom, where you can teach and you can be. This is a student from the school. You told me that. So is it true what I say? This is
But he's a victim. He has no chance. No chance. But I mean, I think it's.
But he came here to be victim for you.
But it's obvious. You can imagine why the school that Cardinal is running is so great, because you are so great.
Oh, thank you.
I think there are three kinds of architects. One kind of architect gets more and more work, and the work gets worse and worse. Then there's another kind of architect. It gets less work, and it gets better and better. And very rare is the architect gets more and more work, and the work gets better and better. And you're like this.
Thank you. My God. Thank you.
So good. It's very different.